Welcome to Legacy Leaders, the podcast where leadership begins with you. I'm Juan.
I'm Ben.
And each week we dive deep into personal development, purpose, and the mindset shift that shapes courageous leaders today. Because remember, the first person you're ever going to lead is yourself. We're back, another podcast, getting it ready. How was your vacation, brother?
Vacation is well needed for sure, but it was good, man. I'm ready to get back on the grind and freshen my boots and ready to roll.
That's right. You know, we put up some content for you guys to be watching. Let us know what you guys think on it. Comment it. Send us a message on our IG page, Legacy Leaders 25. Let us know what you think. And if you do have a question, send it our way so we can answer it. Well, we did have a question this week. The question was, what can I do to start making the change?
Making a change starts with first knowing where you're at.
Yeah.
Right. You can't change something if you don't know where you're currently at, but you also have to know what you want. Right. So you can't change unless you really know what you're going after. So if you're not happy, you're not content. It's just like anything we've talked about, on episode 1 or 2, you are the difference maker. You're the change maker, but it takes action. You can't just have grandiose ideas and all these things you want to do and not put effort behind it. So the decision to change first starts with, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
Do a little soul searching.
Yes.
It's one of those things where you have to plan, you have to get up, you have to be intentional. We talk about leading with purpose. We talk about doing things with intention. First things first, like we talked about on our last episode, you have to know where you're going. You have to have a goal. You have to have a mentality of what you're reaching for. Yeah. There's a villain in every story. So if there's a villain in your story and you're like, man, I want to be that guy. I want to chase that guy or that girl. Go find out what they're doing that's motivating you or what's getting a fire lit under you that you want. Envy is not a great thing, but it could be a good thing to motivate yourself and really get yourself up and moving and create that change. But change starts in the mirror. Yeah. Michael Jackson, the man in the mirror.
Yep.
Change starts with the man in the mirror. Wake up in the morning and give yourself positive affirmations and talk about the positivity in your life. And we talked about manifestation in our previous episodes, and what do you want out of life is speak it into existence. Even if you don't have it yet, speak as though you're going to get it. It's not a when or if, it's a when situation. So change really starts with the decision in your mind to do something different. It's whether you're fed up with where you live, your job, your physical health, your mental health. It all starts with recognizing where you're at, what you're unhappy with, manifesting where you want to go, setting goals, planning it, and that's how you change.
That's some amazing words. A lot of people want to change, but I put in that other video that I made this week, people want to change, but they're stuck with I can't change. This is how I've always been, and they live with that. And sometimes people tell themselves that. Why? Because they want to feel good about it. This is how I've always been. I can't change. No, this is who I am. I've done this for 10 years and people don't know something new, and people are scared or afraid to do something new or find out their full potential when they actually do start changing, and that's a big issue that we have, that a lot of people keep on saying that to themselves. I can't change. This is who I am. This is how I've been. I've always done it this way.
And you have to have an open mind to change. You wake up and do the same thing day in and day out. That's kind of like those plateaus I talked about previously, is that you get stuck in a rut. And that's what causes the unhappiness. It's not when you're super low, because when you're super low, you're like, man, I got to fight tooth and nail to get out of this. Really, the plateaus is where you're unhappy. And that's when people finally make a change, is when they hit rock bottom because they get fed up. Or people make a change when they're at the top and they make moves that they're a little more calculated, less risk, because they don't want to lose everything that they got getting to the top. So change really is a mentality that you have to accept who you are and what you want to be before you can actually change. And people use it as a crutch. Like you said, people are like, oh, I've always been this way. Well, all right, cool. I mean, that's arrogance. That's ignorance. Yeah. It's you're saying that you're fine and the world has to conform to who I am, where that's not the way we should live our lives. We should conform to the people around us and looking at different cultures and be open-minded to different foods and go in different places. Like you said, I just went on vacation to Mexico, right? Completely different lifestyle than the United States. You go down there and everything's slower. People are more relaxed. People are nice, but they look at you. Like, I go down to Mexico, and if I'm sitting there speaking English, and listening to them speaking Spanish in the background, a lot of people are saying negative things, until I start speaking Spanish back to them. Yeah. If I start speaking Spanish back to you, all of a sudden you're like, oh man, I like this guy, and it creates a different mentality where I'm not there out of ignorance and I'm not there out of, oh, this is me, conform to who I am. We talked about it before. Like, one of the biggest things when I was growing up was, oh man, this is America, speak English.
Yes.
You know, we were talking about this earlier. You and I had a conversation like you go to Mexico, it's kind of the same thing, right? Like, oh no, speak English. Now you're in Mexico.
Yeah.
It's time for me to speak Spanish, right? So the change really comes down to having an open mindedness and willingness to see the world around you, from the people to the culture to the possibilities, the opportunities, you know, and then manifesting what you want to do. So you
Correct.
can't use it as a crutch of, oh, that's how I've always been. You know, you see women walking around with the RBF, right? Resting bitch face. And they're like, oh, this is who I am. I'm a bitch. Like they should be proud of that.
Yeah.
That's not something to be proud of.
Yeah.
You're saying that you're too ignorant to change who you are and that the world should conform to you. What
Yes.
makes you so important?
And that's a big thing. But like I said in the little video that I made this week, change, it's inevitable. It's gonna happen regardless. The world's constantly changing. The
Yeah,
every
absolutely.
year they come out with the new design of a car, shoes, and we accept it. We embrace those changes. But when it comes to ourselves changing, and why is that so hard? It's like we should embrace it too and know that if things are getting better, well, why not us get better? Why not us change the life that we're living? If we currently don't like who we are, we said on the last podcast, we don't like the job we're working with. Well, just leave, change,
Get a new one.
change it, and that's the thing where people don't realize that we live in a world where it's evolving, it's changing every single year, every month. There's something's changing. But we accept those changes. We accept everything that happens around us. But when it comes to us inside, changing the person who we are inside, it's so difficult for people to change that because, like I said, that you said that crutch. Oh, I'm gonna use this to keep on feeling better. That I cannot change and I won't change. And that was hopefully we answered some of your question for you. But today's topic is discipline versus motivation. What really drives growth?
You know, the difference between motivation and discipline, I think, comes down to knowing the definition and the textbook definition of the two things. You know, motivation is often one of those feelings. It's the desire or willingness to really do something, you know, and that comes and goes depending on your mood, your mentality, who you're with, who you're around, what's going on in the world. If you're sick, if you're happy, if you're, you know, so it's a very emotional thing. So motivation comes and goes,
Yeah.
you know. Discipline is really the intentional things that you do in your life. It's the habitual things. It's creating the mindset to where it doesn't matter how you feel, you're going to do what you do. You know, it's like you see Michael Jordan going into the playoffs and playing ball with 104-degree temperature. Do you think he wanted to be on the court playing with 104-degree temperature? No, that's discipline. He pushed himself to do that because he already conditioned his body to do it. You see a lot of major athletes out there and stuff that talk about when they're practicing, they practice harder than they play.
Yeah.
So the games are actually easier,
Yeah.
right? Because they're so grueling on themselves in practice because of that daily discipline and what they get up and do. Where motivation, I think, is also, it's driven by outside factors. It's driven by people trying to clap for you, like coaches and things of that nature. So if those people aren't there clapping for you, though, then what? You got to turn to your own self-discipline and really turn it on and get the job done that you set out to do beforehand. And that's really the difference between motivation and discipline in my eyes, showing up when you don't want to.
Correct. Motivation, I've always said, and I always tell people, motivation is an emotion. It's how you feel, what you feel. Today I feel happy, so I'm gonna get the job done. Or today I feel sad. Guess what? I might call off at work. I'm not really feeling it. I need a sick day today because I can't make it happen. But the discipline is like, okay, I know I got this job that I have to go do today. I gotta go in. I'm gonna push it out. I'm gonna finish it, and then and keep on going. And eventually, when you have that discipline, even though you don't feel like doing it, you keep on doing it. It becomes natural to you, and you just start doing that job that you want to go do. But the problem is we all rely on sometimes motivation, and motivation gets you started, but it's not going to help you finish. And that's what people misunderstand that, yeah, motivation is great, it can get you pumped up, but halfway through your rep, your motivation's gone. Then what are you going to do? You're going to let the bar drop on you? You're just going to keep on going. That's when discipline kicks in. There's the power of one more by Ed Milet, and I love that phrase, that he says one more, and you keep on doing one more rep, and eventually you get so used to it that in your mind you programmed it that one more rep or whatever, and that is whatever you decide to do. Either if you're making sales, you're working out, you're taking jump shots, whatever it is, you can just one more because you never know where that one more might get you. And it's just building up your discipline to keep on going.
Well, the discipline is really the training of your mind, body, and soul to do and condition the things that you need to do, not that you want to do. Motivation is what you want to do.
Yeah.
That comes and goes. So you may not want to get up and go to the gym this morning. You may not want to get up and go to your job this morning. Discipline is knowing I have to go to the gym this morning because my peak physical health depends on it. I have to get up today and go to my job because I need the income to pay my bills or take care of my family.
Yes.
The discipline is really doing things in spite of how you feel. It's conditioning yourself to do what you say you're gonna do. You know, in episode 1, you asked me, "Hey, what's one quote or what's one question you leave your life by?" And that was one of the things I told you is always do what you say you're gonna do. That's the discipline, right? So I may tell you, "Hey, next week let's get together on Tuesday," and at the time I'm motivated. I'm like, "Hey, let's get this done. Let's knock this out." And it's one of those things where I'm like, let's have a good day doing it. And I'm motivated at the time. So I say, hey, let's commit to this. You know, and then I get to that day and I'm like, man, I'm not feeling good. I got this going on. I got 10 other things on my plate. That's when the discipline kicks in. I'm like, you know what? All right, told Juan, I'm going to be there. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get it done. Boom. You show up. It doesn't matter how you feel. You do what you say you're going to do. And we talked about the change a second ago. Change is really, it's a habitual, intentional thing. You know, it takes a lot to create those habits. But the discipline, once you create the habit, you feel like crap when you miss it. So if you're going to the gym every single day, 7 days a week, whatever, or you're hitting your routine, or it's a work day, you know, and you're doing that day in and day out, and you hit that discipline part, you really feel like shit when you miss a day.
Yeah.
You know, like if you feel sick and you can't make it to the gym that day, you feel terrible.
Yeah.
You know, so get in your car, drive to the gym. Even if you can't go in and work out for an hour, at least sit in the parking lot for 20 minutes because you kept that habit. You kept the habitual, intentional action in place that creates that discipline. Whether you go in for, 5 reps real quick, boom, boom, boom. All right, see you later. I feel like shit. I'm going home. It creates that neurological mapping in your body to keep that discipline and keep that mindset.
How was I so disciplined to going to the gym, even though I worked 14-hour days and I was sleeping, probably like 3 hours a day at times, He told me, how you so disciplined to keep on going to the gym? I told him it first started with, I would go 30 minutes, 15 minutes, just do some, either I would hit the sauna for 15 minutes, do a walk for 15 minutes, and then I'll go home. But I was programming my brain to get used to that. This is what I got to keep on doing, keep on doing. And then eventually it goes from 30 minutes to an hour, to an hour and a half, to 2 hours. I keep my routine going where it's walking, lifting weights. And at the end of the day, once I'm done, I hit the sauna and then I just loosen it up. But how do you build it? Doing steps by steps. You can't, how do you get Rome?
You can't build Rome in a day, right?
Yes.
It's built brick by brick. You have to create those small steps. So you don't start by not working out and then on January 1st, we talked about before, you don't just go to the gym on January 1st, like, all right, New Year's resolution. Here we go. That's your motivation. That's not your discipline, right? The people that are doing it year round aren't going in and working out 2 hours at a time every single time they go in the gym. That's not how it starts. You're going to burn yourself out and then your motivation wears out and then you have to rely on your discipline at that point. So you have to put your faith in knowing that you're going to follow through with something, but don't burn yourself out. Don't run your motivation out, so get up, go to the gym, spend that 15 minutes walking, like you said, and just create the small actions. Those smaller actions are always going to lead to bigger actions because it's the habitual part of neurologically mapping your brain for the discipline that you're looking for. It's a mentality shift. It's a change in the way you think, and that takes time. It's not something you just wake up, all right, I'm going to do 2 hours at the gym today, so build on it, right? Go to work, go in 10 minutes early today, start like that. When you're working today, plan out your day tonight. When you go to sleep, before you go to bed tonight, write out, hey, these 3 things tomorrow. I'm going to accomplish these 3 things. Yeah. That way, if you accomplish those 3 things and nothing else on your day, at least you got what you wanted to do tomorrow. And whether it's working out, whether it's work, whether it's personal development, whether it's leadership, whether it's writing, hey, I'm going to write another book. I'm going to write 10 pages today. Yes. When I first met you and you started reading books, right? I tell you, hey man, read 10 pages a day or read 15 pages a day. You're going to read 12 books in a year. Yeah. That's a lot. Yeah. If you think about it, the average person doesn't read 1 book a year, yet alone 12 books a year, and then all of a sudden you get into it and then you're like, all right, you're going from 15 pages to, all right, I'm going to read 3 chapters, it creates the discipline to really fuel you. And then you fall in love with the process not the destination, not the end goal. You fall in love with going to the gym. You want to feel your muscles burning when you're lifting weights. You want to have that sense of tension. The same thing with work. You start to challenge yourself at work with that discipline, and then you start to think, okay, now what? What's my next move?
Yeah.
How can I attain this? Or how can I get 1% better? That was the other thing I told you in episode 1 is the question we should all be asking ourselves is, am I better today than I was yesterday? And the true way to get to that is knowing the difference between motivation and discipline and applying the discipline mentality to your life. And then that relates back to the change that we talked about earlier.
We said it, motivation is good, it gets you going, it pumps you up. But if motivation is all we needed, everybody in the world would be successful.
Yeah.
But it's that discipline. You just said it a couple seconds ago that Michael Jordan going to the gym, working out, he never missed the basics. Kobe Bryant never missed the basics. Dwayne Wade never missed the basics. They were always at the gym, but they have such an successful career, at Tiger Woods as well. These are people, Tom Brady, people that never missed practice and they were always there, and I like Tom Brady's story because man, he was one of the last picks in the draft, and he didn't start for a good couple years of the season. They gave him a shot, and what happened when they gave him a shot? He shined. He was ready. He was disciplined. But yet again, that practice of him being disciplined every single day, going to practice, and what did his coach tell him? Don't worry about, focus on what you can do better.
Yep.
Focus on what you can put out there, and that's what he did. And when his time was, he shined. And how many Super Bowls has he got? Same with Michael Jordan. He came in, he showed up, showed out. And there's a story I seen yesterday that made me laugh. He got to a point where nobody wanted to trash talk him, so he started trash talking himself. And building stories in his head to keep that discipline and that fire going for him to keep on scoring all those points on people. Because nobody wanted to talk smack to Michael Jordan. Why? Because they knew if they talked smack, he was dropping 50 to 60 points on them, no problem. Blocking them, taking all that stuff. And I like that. That people didn't want to do it, but he still talked.
You have to have a villain to chase. Like I said earlier, there's a villain in every story. So what are you chasing? But with that discipline comes consistency. We're talking about Jordan and all these successful people. Kobe Bryant said the reason he was so successful is because he never got bored of the basics. That takes consistency. That consistency is a derivative of the discipline, right? If you have discipline to consistently get up every single day and be at the gym at 4 a.m. when everybody else isn't even showing up till 6 and you're already icing your knees and eating breakfast, that's what's going to create the difference, and so you have to consistently show up. But that consistency and discipline, are hand in hand. You have to have the discipline to do what you say you're going to do, no matter how you feel, whether you're sick, excited, tired, pumped, lazy, whatever it is. The discipline keeps you going. That consistency creates that mind mapping that we talked about. That consistency is like showing up to the gym for that 15-minute walk or sitting in your car. If you just can't even make it in the gym, you at least showed up to the gym, and that keeps that routine going regardless, right? So, discipline, motivation, two very different things. A lot of people don't understand the difference between them, or they think they're the same thing, and that's what they're relying on. Oh, I'm motivated. People say that and you're like, okay, why would I hire you today as opposed to the next 10 people I'm going to talk to? Oh, well, I'm a very motivated individual. Well, today you are. You're looking for right? You're definitely motivated today. You're out here hitting the streets. You're throwing out resumes. You're interviewing. You're talking to people. You're motivated. But now what happens 6 months down the road after I hired you? Do you still have that same motivation? Or is it going to be that same discipline to get up, get in your car, get ready, come in, look good, look sharp, right? Because everybody comes in and interviews well. They come in, they're dressed to the nines. They put their best Sunday suit on or whatever it is for their interview. 3 months later, 6 months later, they get comfortable and that motivation's gone. And you got to rely on your work ethic and consistency and discipline. How are you going to show me you're that guy versus the next 10 people that I talk to? That's a good question to ask people when they say, oh, I'm motivated. Well, cool. I'm glad you're motivated. That's great for today. But what about tomorrow?
Yep. And like I said, that motivation it's people always say, I'm motivated today. They go to work motivated, or they need some motivation. Like, I can't motivate you if you can't motivate yourself. That's the
No.
thing. I can't inspire you if you can't inspire yourself. I've had a bunch of those questions asked to me. How do I motivate myself? That's up to you, bro. I don't know what's gonna motivate you. I don't know what gets you going. I'm me. You just said it. That discipline keeps me going no matter what. I might be sick, and this. I didn't miss work regardless if I was sick or not. I still showed up. It took you telling me, hey, get the hell out of here, man. You need to go rest. But if it's up to me, that discipline makes me, like you said, that workout, that discipline makes me stay there and put in the work, because if I don't do it, I go home in my head, it's like I could have done better. I could have done more. I could have done this, and that didn't let me go home early because I knew I had a bunch of tasks that I still had to finish. Like, no, 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 I got to finish this. I got to finish that, and well, that was part of having my day planned out. You know, I always had my days planned out before I would go home, before I would go to bed, and my day was always planned out, so I knew exactly what I could tackle, and if I could win the day. If I could win the day, that just made me feel much more better of myself, but knowing that I did the right things, you know, and that's the discipline where I knew exactly I had to come in, show up, show out, and the next day, not because I'm motivated, it's because I had that discipline to keep on doing the same thing, keep on doing the same thing. And, you know, and having that discipline led me to have a wonderful year and a couple wonderful years just managing, you know, because I kept on having results. I kept on getting results, and that pushed me to keep on going forward because I was getting all these results from the actions that I decided to take. Because if I was motivated, you know me, I was there was days where I was pissed off. I didn't want to do nothing because I was pissed. But that discipline told me I got to keep on doing it. I got to keep on doing it. You know.
You know, motivation is driven by those outside factors a lot of times, though, because it is emotional. So it's going to come down to, do you have a coach, a mentor pushing you? That's motivation. Is there something you want to buy? That's motivation. You know, like, oh, I need to work this many hours to make this many dollars to buy X amount of things,
Yes.
or whatever you want to purchase. You know, so the motivation is really an external driving force. So it's still good because you want people clapping for you. You want people pushing. You want people, you know, helping you get what you're trying to achieve, and in turn helping them get what they are trying to achieve. So motivation's a good thing still, but it's a derivative of the outside noise in the world, whether it's something you're buying or a goal you're trying to achieve and someone else is trying to achieve as well, like a team sport, for example. You know, motivation is good in those settings, but discipline is self-dialogue. The discipline is you, yourself, and I having that conversation in your head and beating the mental game and the mental capacity to say, today, I'm going to leave it all on the table. So that's where it comes back to the one more mentality, like Ed Milet. You know, it's one more rep in the gym. Let me sell one more house next week. Let me, you know, push out one more plate of food at the restaurant. And that's the discipline, is the self-dialogue in your head. And that's the hard part for people with the mentality, is you get to that certain point and then you start that negative self-talk and you feel like you have that imposter syndrome. Am I good enough? Am I doing enough? Can I do one more rep?
Yeah.
And that's where the discipline really kicks in, because you're pushed your mind to push through that mentality and say, you know what, I am good enough. I can do one more rep. I can do one more plate of food. I can do one more. And so that's really where it comes down to. And people, David Goggins,
I was about to mention him right now.
you know, like you look at guys like that, it's not about motivation with that guy. He's going to get up. His body's going to fail before his mind.
Yes.
Because the discipline and the way he's constructed his thinking patterns allows his discipline to take over when motivation is no longer in the room and there's nobody left clapping for him saying, hey, let's run this next 10 miles.
Yeah, and just with him, bro, like I when I read his book, it pushes you. It makes you like, damn, dude, if he did it, well, I can go out there and do it too, you know. But he also says it takes some time. His thing is he didn't really care. He was gonna go do it, you know. He was the odd in the bets, you know. He was the one that wasn't supposed to make it, supposed to be doing the stuff he did, you know. And he started off running miles out of nowhere, you know. But like you said, it was in the mindset that he had, that he had to keep on going. When everything else failed, he kept on going with, because he knew he was tougher than what he was doing, so he kept on pushing it. You know, he talks about how his knees would swell up and everything would go wrong, you know. But yet again, how many times did he had to do the seals? It was multiple times. It wasn't just one, you know. But that talks about his discipline of he had to go back. He had to go finish what he once started. And
listen, it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
We talked about that before. Failure is where you learn. That's where you grow. So it's not okay to give up. You know, they talk about different scenarios. Like, for example, you'll miss 100% of the shots you don't take. You know, you can't do certain things if you don't put your mind to it. So if you don't try, you're going to fail. But if you try and fail, that's okay. Because in the process, you got 1% better or 10% better. You know, like you see guys out there, Marcus Luttrell, talking about how his Navy SEAL training was and how him and his brother were doing push-ups for this guy down in Texas. And the guy's, hey, can you do 100 push-ups? Well, can I do 100 straight right now? Probably not. But can I do 40? Probably. Wait a minute, do another 10. Wait a minute, do another 40. You know, whatever it takes. Can I do 100 push-ups? Absolutely. Can I do them straight? Maybe not yet, but if I do 40 and then 10, eventually I'll be able to do that 100 like it's nothing. So it's the power of the discipline is not giving up and pushing yourself to failure. Whether it's one more rep at the gym, all of a sudden you got a spotter. Hey, I can't get it up. Now you're here to help me get that bar back up. So it's creating the mentality of just not quitting.
Yeah.
That's the discipline.
And that's a big thing, not quitting, going forward towards your goals and doing exactly what you said you were gonna do, and you just said, you'll miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And if you look at Jordan, Kobe, you don't remember the shots they failed. You remember all the championships that they won. All the good things that they have. The people that want to hate are gonna look at all the shots that they missed. You're really looking at people that have done greatness. You don't look at the misses. You look at, damn, how many championships did they have? How many scoring titles did they get? You look at all this other stuff. You don't look at the bad, because when you see greatness, you'll straight up applaud it. You look at it and you're like, damn, okay, that's how I want to get to. How can I get to it? And you start seeing all the discipline. You don't look at the missed shots, but you focus on the good. When you focus on the good, you keep on going. But being constant with what you're doing, and that's a big thing that people don't have the consistency. Consistency has a lot to do with being disciplined. A lot of people can't stay consistent because one day they do it, the next day they don't, the next day they do it again, and then 3 days they don't do it. And what's that? That programs your mind to say, okay, well, I know he's not going to do it today, so I don't got to do it. But when you're disciplined, your mind's telling you, hey, you got to go, you got to go, you got to go. And if you don't go, what happens? You feel bad. You're like, damn, I missed the workout today. I missed work today that I've done. Or, and that's the thing that people have a lot of issues with is staying consistent, when they need to be consistent.
And that's the mental part of it. It's 100% mental. Physically, your body could do so many things that you're not even aware your body could do it, right? Until you actually do it, and your mind will beat you before your body will every single time. As soon as your mind gives up, your body's going to give up with it because your mind controls your body, so it's really about creating that mentality. And that's the difference between the motivation and the discipline. I feel is the motivation is how am I feeling today? It's all emotional. It's led by your mind, where the discipline, it doesn't matter how you feel. Physically, you can be the weakest you ever been. You can be sick. You can be angry. You can be upset. Discipline is, I said I'm going to do it. I'm going to freaking do it. And I don't care how I get it done. I'm just going to get it done. So that's the difference that people got to understand. And that's, the biggest thing. So,
and I got a story, a good bro, that there was a moment where I came back to work after an accident that I did have, and I had a bag connected to my stomach, and I had to grind harder than everybody else, bro. I wasn't allowed to pick up 25 pounds no more, bro. I was dependent
yeah.
on another person to lift this up for me. But me as that discipline driven person, I was doing all that. I was outworking everybody. Why? Because I had the discipline. I had that work ethic that I had to come in and put in the work. Just because I was, you could say, quote unquote, during that time I was handicapped because I was missing parts of my body, but I kept on going. I didn't stop.
Mhm.
That's when discipline kicked in. Because believe me, having a bag stuck to your stomach, you ain't motivated. You have
Yeah.
no motivation in your life when you got to use the restroom through a bag.
It's depressing,
It's
right?
it's
It's
it,
depressing.
it
It's
was the
not motivating.
discipline that kept me going. I
Yeah.
had to go in. I had to work 10 times harder than them because these people have all the organs inside of them. I'm missing some right now. I was missing 100 centimeters of my large intestine, and I came still, and I proved to myself, not to myself, but to everybody else, just because I have this army doesn't mean I'm stopping. I'm still going for what's mine. I still had an end game result where I had to be. So I kept on being disciplined every single day, showing up and working hard, working 10-hour days when everybody else wanted to work 8. I
Yeah.
was nonstop working. I was like, can I work 12? Well, if they let me work 12, I'm gonna work 12 today. But everybody wanted to go home with their 6, 7 hours, tops 8. But I was there like, nah, I'm not trying to go home. I'm trying to keep on working. I'm trying to keep on working, back pain and everything. But that discipline drove me to start being noticed, get that shine, and people started recognizing my work. And yeah, I started moving up. But that's the power of discipline, because motivation, something might happen to you, like I just said. I had no motivation, bro. I was depressed because I'm like, I'm not I'm not who I used to be.
Yeah.
I can't do the stuff that I can't run. I can't do none of this stuff no more. But that discipline drove me to keep on going and going 10 times harder than everybody else. That David Goggins mentality. I got to keep on going no matter what, and which I did. And y'all hear about that story later on in the interview. I just wanted to give a quick story on this part, but that's how discipline can work. And when you have a factor that pushes you to start doing it, you keep on going, bro. You don't depend on that motivation. discipline.
Exactly.
Like I said, that I had no motivation, man. You know this. I felt I was at my lowest at that point in my life because I wasn't me. I wasn't the Juan that could do everything. It was the Juan that was limited to doing stuff. The doctor gave me a paper, so I'll tell you guys that story sooner than later, But it's that discipline that drives you to get to where you want to be. You want to win that championship. You want to hit those next 10 reps. Whatever you want to do, you got to stay disciplined, stay consistent, and always know what your end game is. What are you chasing? What are you after? What do you want in life? That's
Yep.
what you got to keep in your mind so you can stay disciplined and know that, hey, you know what? If I miss today, I'm not gonna have it. So I'm gonna go in. Whatever you want to have a six pack, you got to go do everything. You want to have a nice car, I got to go to work. You want to be the next entrepreneur, you got to put in the work. You want to be the biggest podcast, hey, you got to keep on doing this. We don't miss, we don't stop. We're staying consistent with our stuff. If we don't post a podcast, we still got little short videos of me and him talking. Hopefully they do inspire you, motivate you to keep on going forward. And don't depend on motivation. Get that discipline built up. Discipline is something that's going to lead you to a bigger part in your life.
And if you guys have questions, throw them in the chat. We'd like to hear the questions. Gives us something to talk about when we're on this and not just rant back and forth and have conversations on video, but it allows us to engage with the people following this podcast. And really, hopefully you get something out of each episode, even if it's just one of those 5-7 minute shorts, and it's something that will wake you up inside. It'll light a fire and give you the motivation and discipline to make the change that we were talking about earlier. Not everybody's comfortable with their living situation or where they're at. Hey, let's change it. Let's be that outside factor. If you got questions for us, drop it in the chat. Hopefully we can help you, and, hopefully we can mentor you through either a podcast or a personal connection, whether it's email, phone call, Instagram, YouTube, consulting, a book, pick up my book. As long as we are making an impact in the world, that's really our goal in this.
Build new leadership, build people to change their lives, be able to change their lives. Because if we were able to do it, you guys can too. It all starts with your mindset. How do you have your mindset? Can you believe in yourself enough to go after what you really want in life? Are you willing to take those steps that you need to take to get to where you want to be? And you gotta block out those outside noises, because everybody's going to criticize you and everybody's going to talk smack. I bet you there's a lot of people talking smack because I decided to do this podcast with my friend, but it is what it is. I know where I'm going. I know where I'm headed, and nothing stops me, and like you said, if you got any questions, anything like that, hit us up on Spotify, leave your comments on here, or jump on Legacy Leaders 25 on Instagram, send me a DM, write me a comment, whatever it is that you guys want me to talk about. And like I said, if you like it, like what you hear, share it. If you like it motivates you, pump it out to other people that that might need this information. But legacy isn't built on how you feel, it's built on what you do. Think about that. We're gonna leave you that as a test, as homework. Think about it. It's not how you feel, it's what you do to build that legacy.
Take action.
Thank you for tuning in for Legacy Leaders. Hopefully we inspired you, challenge you to make a new work towards what you're doing. And until next time, leave an impact. We're out.
Later.